million. One in a 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 million. You know they're coming up to me, 'cause I'm just the kind of girl with this thing it can the beat, but the rhythm's getting higher. Go, 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 go. One in a million. 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 I know it's me you see through the shadow, my reflection. The meaning of your being is you can't resist my nectar.
You've tuned into What's in Your Closet, presented by Sizewise Closet Coach. It's our bi-monthly online meetup where your closet intersects with style, sustainability, and technology. Have you ever looked in your full closet and said you had nothing to wear? Do you cringe at the thought of shopping? How about finding the right size? Guess what? You're not alone. You can make your wardrobe align perfectly with your lifestyle and values with our virtual closet audit services. You'll always have something to wear. If you're looking to revamp, declutter, or spice up your closet, you've come to the right place. Our chats are about style, sustainability, and confidence. Get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's figure out how to create a wardrobe that works for you. Let the transformation begin.
Hey there, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you're tuning in from today. Welcome to another episode of What's in Your Closet. My name is Damien. I am the founder and CEO of Sizewise Closet Coach, and we're a virtual closet audit service. So if you're one of those individuals that look in your filled closets every morning, frustrated and overwhelmed by making decisions, this is the perfect place to be. Today we're joined by Ren and one of our closet coaches, Joy, and they'll be talking about the history of fashion. So please sit back, bring your favorite beverage, and enjoy the show.
Thank you so much, Damien, for that amazing intro, as always. I'm excited to be here today with Ren. Welcome, Ren.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you as well. And thank you for making time for us today. For those of you that don't know me, I've been on or been with Sizewise for a bit of time now, but my background is in fashion. Started out in the fashion industry as a model. So I have about 20 years, a little bit over, experience with fashion and all things thereof. Excited to bring my knowledge and expertise to share and talk to Ren about some of her expertise and what she's doing in her community. So I want to quickly share with you guys who Ren is and why we brought her on. So Ren is the owner of Spirits of Fashion. So you can find her all over social media, Spirits of Fashion and spiritsoffashion.com. And what she does in the world, she's all about sustainable vintage fashion and finding your personal style through sustainable vintage fashion, pieces that really speak to who you are, but remaining sustainable. So I want to spend a little time today talking about our topic, which is, of course, the history of fashion. I took some notes because I got a chance to do some background on Ren and find out a little bit more. So Ren, please share with us a little bit about who you are and how you show up in the world of sustainable fashion.
Well, thank you, Joy. I will do that. I started out with a career, completely different career in the health field. And, you know, I never loved it. So I'll keep that part of it short. I was never really passionate about what I was doing. So years and years went by and I didn't know what else I wanted to do except that I knew I loved vintage clothing and antique clothing, and I would read about it and, you know, go to stores and start collecting. And I've been doing that since my 20s, my late 20s. But by my 40s, I was totally burned out in my old career. So I happened to find out by chance that there was a program at the University of Rhode Island, which is where I went as an undergrad. They have a graduate program in textiles, merchandising, and design, but with a historic concentration on fashion and textiles. So I went back to school in my 40s and taught at the college level for 13 years, loved it. But then I started doing these events because libraries started contacting me and saying, can you talk about such and such an era? And the first one I did was the Titanic, because it was 2012 and it was the 100-year anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. So a library in Massachusetts had me do that. And that's when I knew that was my audience. That was it. So yeah, it was a great change for me. I never looked back. Once I got into grad school, I knew I was in the right spot. So
I absolutely love that.
Thanks.
Yes. And what's something that stood out to me, and this is actually, I have a few questions that I want to, ask you and kind of get to know you a little bit more, Ren.
Sure.
But you shared something that stuck out to me because I actually have a daughter that's 17. She made 17 this week. And she is into vintage and 2000s style. So she goes to the thrifting and she goes through different spots that are online. I won't name names, right, for reasons that we don't want to get. But so she goes to places that she chooses to find fashion that speaks to her, right? And that's something that she branched out and did on her own. So you talked about in your 20s, kind of starting to find your fashion interests. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, my aunt was in the antiques business. She didn't sell clothing, but she would always show us what she was going to be bringing to the antique shows. And it fascinated me at a very young age. And then in my 20s, some movies came out. One was Pretty in Pink, and she was into vintage. And one was Flashdance. She was into vintage. So it started me thinking, and I was like, this really speaks to me. This is what I want. And so I started slowly. I did a lot of accessories in the beginning, bags, hats, that kind of thing. But then I started finding clothing. They had more vintage clothing stores back then. I didn't even think about thrift stores. I just didn't know until I got older and I started realizing this is a great place because vintage can be hiding in thrift stores. And a lot of people don't realize it, but when you get an eye for it, you can just look at a label and say, oh yeah, this is from the 80s or this is from the 70s. Yeah. So is that what your daughter is doing now?
You got it. She's got an eye for early 2000s fashion. That's her era. And it's funny because it's almost like it's interesting with, kids, right? She's almost mimicking where I was at the highlight of my fashion, right? In my 20s, loving that era of fashion. I loved the 2000s, early 2000s fashion. And, she can now go into stores and she knows within minutes, like, Mom, they have what I want. Or, even the quality, right? Because we can say now with certain designers, over 20 years, their quality has even changed.
Right.
And so she wants to find pieces that were made in the early 2000s with certain designers because the quality was that much better. So
exactly. Yeah. Yes. And that's what I tell all of my audiences. The quality just isn't there now. And when you go back to vintage, I always bring a ton of pieces with me and accessories and say, this is why this is still here. And it's from the 1920s. It was made so well.
I love that, from the 20s, right? Like the quality you can tell based on the time that you have that item and what it looks like today.
Right. It still looks better than a lot of the stuff that we buy new because it's just not made well at all, really, a lot of times. So I treasure those older pieces, and I do wear vintage. I'm in a vintage dress. It's very hot here in Vermont. And so I'm in a vintage late 60s shift dress when all of those bright colors were so popular. And then I have earrings that were given to me by a close friend that she wore in the 60s and 70s. So I do wear it too. I just don't wear the really old 20s, 30s and beyond because it's too fragile. But I always tell my my clients, you can find a lot of vintage inspired clothing and accessories that you can wear. And if you can get an eye for that, if you know what the decade looks like, you can find those in thrift stores extremely easily. So
Absolutely.
that's, yeah.
I totally agree. And I like how each of your pieces, not just the history, but a personal story, right? Like the friend and,
Yeah.
knowing exactly how you found that piece and what it meant to you when you found it. So that's another part of finding your style and what speaks to you in fashion. And so I
Right.
want to bring that up next, right? For the younger folks out there, and even for folks, that are maybe experiencing, what is it called? Like when you're in your closet and you just don't know what to wear, right?
Right.
And you're feeling that anxiety. But really and truly, at any age, we can find fashion that speaks to us. And so, talking about history and vintage and styling, I want to ask you in particular, what was one of your most memorable clients, right, that you either styled, or a presentation that you spoke to an audience that really like they were captivated by you, or something captured your attention in that audience?
Okay, excellent question. When I do my fashion era presentations, I always get a good feedback from them because they love looking back. They love, I see mostly seniors at senior centers, libraries, sometimes senior residence homes, sometimes museums or historical societies, but I do get a lot of the older folks. And they feel invisible. They feel like, what's the point? Well, I'm not going to follow fashion. And I say, you don't have to. You can be who you are. You do not have to feel like you have to dress like everybody else, and whether it's sweats or just really comfortable clothing. You want to be comfortable, but you want to make a statement that's yours. So when I do the styling ones, I bring a lot of crazy statement pieces that I have found over the years, and they love that. And I try to say, okay, how can you make this look more modern? I can hold a piece up, Joy, if you want me to give you an example of what I mean.
Absolutely. I read that you brought some pieces that you use and you've curated. We would love to see them. Thank you, Ren.
Of course. Okay. This is, here we go. This is an incredible piece from the 50s or early 60s. It's all sequins. It's wool on the inside, it's made of wool, but then it has this incredible lining that is like a crepe chiffon, and it's ombre. I don't know how well you can see it, but look at
that. Is what captured my attention, was the pink ombre, Ren. I love pink, and then the ombre. I was like,
you would really rock this, Joy. Yeah, you'd look really good at that. But I love this piece because you could be in jeans and a white t-shirt and wear this, and people are going to say to you for sure, where did you get that? And where can I get one? So, and then the other thing was, I did the 60s last night. I volunteered for a thrift store in town, and my husband's the new manager. So we did the swinging 60s last night. I brought a ton of stuff with me, and I wore this dress. This is a real dress from the 60s.
You can tell, Ren.
Yes.
The way it's cut, the design, that's amazing.
All handmade. Even the hem has the tape, the lace hem tape on it.
Yeah, the fashion tape on the inside.
Yeah, fashion tape. It is in incredible condition. And I have a pair of, they're upstairs. I didn't bring them down, but they're crazy purple reproduction go-go boots that I wore with it.
I'm so glad you said go-go boots. I was like, you have to have go-go boots.
You have to. You have to. So the audience gets such a kick out of that, and they get inspired, and it's really fun. The other thing is, this pair of pants is really from the late 60s. I got them in a vintage store several years ago, but look at the embroidery on those.
It reminds me of Gucci.
Yeah, like what Gucci might do. And so that's my point. You can get things now. There are so many embroidered jeans out there that are modern, but you can get a look of a different decade by just pairing that. You know how they have a lot of the boho shirts right now, a lot of the fast fashion, but you can still find them in thrift stores. You wear them with a pair of embroidered jeans and you look like you came right out of the decade, and it's much less expensive. Yeah. So,
and
then
you can find what speaks to you, right? A fit
yes.
or a color versus whatever is there.
Right. I think style personality is so important. And that brings me back to your question. I had one lady, this was my favorite response that I ever got from a senior center. She came up to me at the end and she said, I've been dressing plain for years. And she said, I still have in my closet a jacket with sequin epaulets. And I'm going to wear it to the senior center. I said, good for you. You should. So it's just, then I have, I have one woman who's been following me if I'm anywhere near her town. And she took me to thrift stores that she knew in her area. And it's wonderful to develop those relationships because, you can help other people, but you're developing this group of followers who really are inspired by not only vintage, but thrifting and sustainability, because that is so, so important. And I know it's difficult now to find vintage in thrift stores, much more difficult than it was, but it's not impossible. Not at all.
That's so true. It's not impossible. If you have a little time and patience, you can definitely do it within a day. Because I've seen my daughter bring home pieces and I'm like, I have to borrow that, by the way. So
good.
Yeah, it's definitely doable. And depending on where you live too, right? You can always venture into different neighborhoods or areas of where you live that maybe you don't normally shop, maybe, a little bit different fashion options, retail, but depending on areas, they also have different fashion in secondhand stores and thrift stores and vintage stores. So that's another thing that's important. Take your time, go outside of your neighborhood and see what's out there.
I agree. And I tell people the same thing, Joy. I say it is an adventure and it's a treasure hunt. And if you go to a place you've never been before, sometimes it's happened to me so many times. I have a son in Kittery, Maine.
Oh,
and
wow.
I discovered the most wonderful consignment store there. I've bought vintage. I have a vintage Lily Pulitzer dress from there. I have a few sweaters, vintage sweaters with all the beading on them.
Yes.
Prices are fantastic because they are giving to charities every week, different charities. So consignment stores are another great place, and it's more curated than the thrift stores. But I like
another thing about consignment is it also gives you an opportunity to possibly connect with somebody that is selling their fashion there if you like what they have to sell, right?
That's right.
You're noticing those people that are putting their because consignment stores, for people that don't know, are usually taking individuals that want to resell their fashion and they do it from one central location, right? So I wanted to say that for people out there, like, what's a consignment store? What does it mean?
Right.
And so that what I'm mentioning is the cool thing is that if you're noticing a person that is constantly bringing in items that you really love or is from the 60s or an era, then you can connect with that person and make sure that, they keep you in mind and possibly look for things that you love according to what they bring into that store.
Right. Exactly. If you get to know those owners, they will help you. They will call you even if they find something that you think that they think you'll like. Yeah, I love it all. I love the thrifting. I love the consignment and even big antique stores, because that 60s dress I just showed you came from a vintage mall, but it was in a booth that there was no clothing except this one 60s dress on a mannequin. And it was so perfect because a lot of times they don't really know the value. I paid like maybe $28 to $30 for it, which is a steal. But because they don't specialize in fashion, I got a better deal than I would have if they had a whole booth of clothing, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. They didn't know the treasure they actually had.
Right. But I did, and I grabbed it. And I've worn it a million times already. So it's more than paid for its for what I paid for it, definitely.
Exactly. I love that. So I'm noticing that our producers are putting up a couple questions that I want to bring in and make sure we also take some questions from the audience, because I'm sure they're excited to find out a little bit more about what you do from their perspective.
Sure.
So one of our questions here is, what is your favorite period in fashion history, Ren, and why?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. There isn't one real favorite. I started with the Victorians, and I still love Victorian fashion. Still, it all started there. But then I realized 30s, 40s, and 50s started because of the glamour. I do the Golden Age of Hollywood presentation. I'm doing this coming week, and it's all the the real glamour that they wore in Hollywood, even makeup and hair and all that.
I love that era.
But the 60s, I grew up in the 60s. So I was too young to wear what my older sisters who were teenagers were wearing. But the memories I have of them getting dressed and witnessing what they wore and seeing my mom's 50s and 60s fashions when I was little. If only I'd kept everything. I didn't know. I didn't know I should be keeping it. Yeah, but I can't pick one. It's really hard for me to pick one era. If I had to, I would say the Victorian bustle period would be it. If you've seen The Gilded Age on HBO, you know what I mean. It's fantastic. Oh, I love it. The incredible fabrics they used, the detail. Of course, we'd be corseted. But
the corset and the details. Yes.
Yes.
I love that. And that brings me to the next question coming up, which is based on the history of fashion, right? Because there's so many eras. How do you think fashion today, modern fashion, has been influenced, right, by some of the eras that you mentioned, Ren?
Oh, good. That's another great question. Fashion comes back constantly. Constantly. There's nothing new. There really isn't. Everything's been done before in some way, shape, or form. And I'm glad you mentioned, I'm going to pull this out. This is from about a year ago in Elle magazine. And I'm sorry, I've been having some lung issues. So I'm sorry I'm clearing my throat so much. But This is Elle magazine. And this article was entitled Mod Squad. And you can see the influence of the 60s in the sunglasses, the white boots, the mod clothing up top. The woman in it is wearing an actual 60s Paco Rabanne designer dress, but they're showing how the influence is still there. They're just going to make it in more modern fabrics, and the glasses are terrific. And then this piece, the next page, looks just like the coats from the 60s. We used to call this the wet look. It was a faux leather, very shiny, and it would not only be a whole piece of clothing, but sometimes would be inserted into, let's say it's a wool fabric. It might have some of the shiny leather inserted into it. And that kind of thing comes back over and over. The 70s have been big recently, but it moves faster. Now we'll see a decade come along for, say, fall fashion, but then by spring, it's in a new decade. So the 2000s, I know, is very hot now. I know so your daughter's doing a good job there finding that period of time. Hard for me because of my age and thinking that Y2K is already considered vintage kind of scares me a little bit, but it is. That's what people are looking at. So, but I'm very thrilled that younger people are getting into it. That makes me happy because they care about sustainability.
That's exactly why my daughter chose to find her personal style through vintage and thrifting because of the sustainability and what you just shared, Ren, the fast fashion, which is not necessarily healthy for our environment in many ways. We only have a few minutes to share a little bit more, but that's a good tip to kind of leave with, right? Leave people with that clarity of fast fashion is fun. You get to see a lot of eras come to light in a quick way. But then there's what happens to all that fashion because it turns over so quickly. Where is it going, And you can find similar items, just like Ren said, eras, if you just take a little time and do the shopping in some of your local vintage thrift stores, consignment stores. Yelp is a fun place to find those stores. I use it all the time. It just takes a little extra time, right? And I think that's the thing about finding your personal style, right? Instead of just going with trends, take a little time, to go out there and try things on your body and feel the fabrics and notice them on your shape. And that also can help you find your personal style.
Exactly. What feels good, what feels right to you. Somebody can think that, oh, this is what I should be wearing because I'm such and such an age. But then they'll put on a statement piece like what I showed you with that sweater and say, wait a minute, I didn't realize how much this would speak to me. And it looks good. And why wouldn't I want to wear it? So I agree.
Yeah. And it's
Personal
fun.
style is, hmm?
And it's fun.
And it's fun. It's so much more fun. COVID really put us in a position of being home with sweats, and people got comfortable with that. Yeah, we all did, Joy. We all did. And I myself was happy to get out of that a little bit once we could get out and about. But we still want to be comfortable. But what you were saying is, yes, we still can be. But it should be your own style, not something somebody tells you should wear, or what fashion industry is saying, this is all we have. This is all you can have, all you can wear.
So true. It's not all. There's so much out there if you just take the time.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ren. I really enjoyed getting to know you, learning. I learned a lot, understanding the history of fashion, what it kind of means through the different periods, and how it, there's nothing new under the sun, right? It always comes back around. So really and truly, you're never out of style.
Right. Exactly. Don't worry about trends. Worry about what you love and what makes you happy. And you can't go wrong.
I love that, right? What makes you feel good.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Ren. I do want to take a few minutes if you want to hang out with us. I want to see if there's any questions from the audience, and maybe there might be some questions for you. So I want to ask the producers, is there anything in the audience that perhaps somebody wants to know about? And I'm going to check some of my questions, and maybe if nothing comes out of the audience, I can ask Ren a couple more questions before we head out.
Okay.
Let's see. You know what? It's funny. I think we got through all of my questions. Like, that's how good and juicy our conversation was.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So you know what? I think we could start wrapping up because I just wanted to leave folks with a couple of key things to remember, right? It looks like we did have something pop up. Let me check that because we want to make sure the audience gets involved. How do you see the role of fashion evolving in society or over the next decade?
Oh, I'm hoping that it keeps going in this direction and that more and more people get on board and start to realize that the fast fashion is getting us nowhere, but to put more things in the landfill. And that is creating there's tons of water used to make just one pair of jeans new. And good jeans last for a very long time, and we can get used and vintage. And I'm hoping that this continues so that we can, yes, society needs to get on board with this because it's too important. It's too important to the way we live and the way we want to live as we move forward.
Yes, we have to take care of our planet in addition to taking care of ourselves. Both are important.
Exactly.
Key takeaway, those of you that love jeans, love beautiful, good fitting jeans, go vintage. I absolutely can vouch for that. You're going to find the best quality jeans in your consignment, vintage, and secondhand stores.
Exactly. I totally agree.
Awesome. I'm so glad we met today, Ren. And thank you again. Those of you that are looking for Ren, you can find her share your information, Ren.
I have a website, spiritsoffashion.com. On Facebook as Spirits of Fashion, and Instagram is Spirits of Fashion Passion. That's the only different one. So hopefully come find me, ask questions, check out my presentations. I also have a newsletter that comes out that tells you where I'm going to be and what the topic will be. So hope that you'll join us at Spirits of Fashion.
I love that. Yes, let's stay connected. And SizeWise, stay connected with us at sizewiseclosetcoach.com, SizeWise Closet Coach all over social media. And remember, we always celebrate eco-friendly options and sustainability here at SizeWise. Thank you so much, Ren. And y'all have a great weekend out there.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for being a part of our community. We hope you're leaving with inspiration, actionable tips, and a renewed sense of purpose. Keep in mind, we do this twice a month, and we'd love to see you again. If you enjoyed today's chat, please share and follow us to stay updated on all our future sessions. Until next time, keep styling, keep smiling, and remember, your closet is a canvas and you are the artist.